So this is the Illustrators of the Future, How Do You Survive as an Artist panel. My name is John Goodwin. I'm the president of Galaxy Press and the moderator for this panel. Here we have Dan dos Santos, who's probably everybody knows who he is, but he's also an Illustrators of the Future contest judge. And we have Bruce Brenneise, who is a winner. He's also an accomplished artist, and he's a winner from the Illustrators of the Future contest. And what we promised you on this panel, so you can draw, paint, and sculpt, but how do you turn that into a profession you can support yourself with? Illustrators of the Future judges discuss the contest and tips on the business of art, from creating portfolios to working with art directors. So to begin with, let me just have each of them introduce themselves a little bit more than my saying what their name is. So Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan dos Santos. I'm primarily a freelance illustrator. I do mostly book covers, though I do some comic stuff, some film stuff. If you know my work, you probably know it from Patricia Briggs covers or Brandon Sanderson, whom I do a lot of, Patrick Rothfuss and Jim Butcher as well, and mostly cover work. I've been doing that for 22 years now.
All right, I'm Bruce Brenneise. I've been working for about 6-7 years as a freelancer. I do otherworldly landscapes for the most part. their art business course was the concept I don't have time for, so I'll just put you in touch with my client. And it's just kind of snowballed from there for the most part.
Actually, that point about networking, I know so many artists whose first job was given to them because another artist couldn't take a job.
Yeah.
And just having peers that are successful and doing the things you like to do, really, like, I think that was one of my first jobs was because I think Donato was too busy. And then one of Dave Palumbo's first jobs was because I was too busy. And it just kind of like, you know, helping keeping
we
all
help
those
each
boats
other.
afloat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're at a convention, and I just recently did a whole interview with Pat Henry, who's the CEO of Dragon Con, you know, about how it grew and evolved. But a big part of Dragon Con is the networking, and this is probably the third biggest art show convention in the US.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And so can you talk about that in terms, you know, continuing on with the networking, but the importance of actually attending shows as you found for your careers, both as in terms of selling your works, but also, which I think is maybe more what you're doing, but also making those connections for future clients.
Yeah. So it's changed a lot. Like it used to be in the 80s, if you wanted to do book cover work, which is, I always kind of set out book cover work is what I wanted to do. You got that by coming to these conventions and small literary conventions that were full of authors. So they were full of editors, and those were the people that were hiring for book cover jobs. That is not the case anymore. But it quite like really it was like scouting back in the 80s and 90s at these cons. Now, mostly this con for me is about networking with fans and networking with my peers more than anything. I don't come here to look for jobs anymore, though that doesn't mean they're not to be found here. There are a lot of jobs, and there's a lot of people with work and would-be authors, which for somebody starting off is almost even better. There's so many aspiring authors coming to this show that are sitting in on writing tracks because they want to be published. And there's so many aspiring artists. And it's like, these are the perfect combination of like the budgets that you're looking for and people with that budget and that need that, you know, going to even, I hang out at the Weston bar because it's where the writers hang out. I like meeting those people that actually like are involved in my business rather than just hanging out with the people I already know all the time. And I make it a point to try to meet new people, and really business connections grow that way greatly for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely second that. One thing that I learned from Lauren and Mark, actually, in their art business course was the concept that, you know, when you're kind of scouting after a particular client, don't assume that like just meeting them once is going to make you. It's like this 5 touches thing where you meet them once, you meet them twice, and like 5 different occasions, different events that you might have met them and had contact and, you know, showed yourself to be a decent human being and all of that. And, you know, you could be practically family after that point.
Yep. Yep.
So now meeting people, there are certain things, there's etiquette and protocols. So, oh, Dan, look at this. I can really paint. I want you to see I can paint.
Yeah.
You know?
You can.
You
John.
see this?
Look at that. It's
What do you
amazing.
think of You think I got a future?
I like when people come up with their portfolio to my booth. I don't mind it. You can't do it all day because I'm busy, but when I have time, it's also why I'm here, is because I think I'm partial to. I was really fortunate to meet a mentor when I was an aspiring artist, and it changed everything. It's a little bit like maybe Muddy Colors for you, is that really somebody lifting that veil and showing you how you can do this is so immensely important. And so if I have that opportunity to do that for somebody at this con, I feel almost obligated to do that. It doesn't mean you want to like be pushy or anything.
Right.
And if somebody's like working or enjoying their drink at the bar, maybe you don't want to do that. But I'm never like sad to look at art. I want to look at everybody's portfolio.
Yeah.
So.
You're the person, he's the person who, when he relaxes from painting his 10, 12-hour day, he's in a couch sketching.
Yeah. Well, that comes with the gig.
So, now you're both connected with the Illustrators of the Future contest. It was how many of you are familiar with what the Illustrators of the Future is? Can you raise your hand?
Ooh, very low. You guys
Very
should
few.
familiarize yourself with it.
So this is it's a competition that was based off of the Rise of Future contest that was started by Owen Hubbard in 1983. 5 years later, because of the success of the Writers Contest, the Illustrators of the Future contest was started. So now it's a competition where We get entries from all over the world. We have about 175 different countries where we have artists submit their work, but the top 12 are chosen each year, 3 every quarter, and they are selected by judges like Dan and winners like Bruce, and they're commissioned to illustrate the winning stories from the Writers of the Future contest each year. And so it gives a forum or a platform for the aspiring artist to get themselves known. These books, everyone wins every year. They win national awards, book awards, and they're always a national bestseller. It's pretty much the best-selling anthology for science fiction that's out there. It happens every year. Each year it comes out. But the main thing about it is it gives a recognition to the artist in this case, and it also, if you didn't actually make it as one of the winners, you can be an honorable mention, receive a certificate for that, and that gives you that vote of confidence that you should keep on working it. And that's one thing I want to discuss here too, is the whole subject of the value, first of all, this contest, and then the importance of not giving up.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to even expound on what the winning the contest entails, because I think this is awesome. That if you get into this contest, whether you're an aspiring writer or an aspiring artist, you guys fly them out to LA and you end up working with the other artists, and you match one of the writers up with the artist, and you illustrate a short story that one of these aspiring authors wants, and they publish you in this book together. And it ends up being first published works. I believe Diana Rowland, whom I've done covers for, her first published work was in this book.
Patrick Rothfuss.
And being published it's this catch-22. Like, if you want to do cover work, the best advertising is cover work. If you want to do magic cards, the best advertising for it is magic cards. So like, how do you get your first cover? But like, other editors look at other covers and they say, I want that on my cover. And I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to like kind of escape that weird loophole and get your work on a bookshelf where somebody that does that can see that thing.
That's the exact point on that stuff. And then when like you became a judge, why did you become a judge, and what's the value of that for yourself?
For me, it's paying it forward mostly. Like I said, I was so fortunate. I stumbled into, when I was sticking flyers under windshield wipers looking for work, I ended up meeting this guy who lived in my hometown and happened to be the president of the Society of Illustrators. And I showed him all the work I wanted to do. And he's like, that's called illustration. You should go to school for illustration. And so he just laid it out I got to watch him do his taxes, do sketches, submit jobs, do revisions. And I was talking to Patty Briggs about this yesterday. She said she saw somebody, she had never made a connection as a reader that she could write the book that she was reading. And somehow I had never made the connection that, I saw this artwork, but I didn't know how to do it. And when I saw somebody just do it as a 9 to 5, it was like, I could do that. I could absolutely do that. It somehow demystified it. So like I said, any opportunity to pay that forward for me, because I would not be doing this now if it wasn't for him. So
that's great. And Bruce?
I would say one of the amazing things about it is just how prolific it is, because basically if you can apply each quarter of the year, right? They're running another section of the segment of the contest, so if you don't, you submit your stuff, and if you don't get in, first quarter, you can, if you've got some new work to submit the next quarter, and so on. So like, you get that honorable mention or whatnot that, sort of gives you that vote of confidence. Just submit to the next one, see if you can get in, because, it can very rapidly happen. Now, I think in my case, I submitted like right before I was like doing full-time, like, or at least a significant amount of my income from professional work. So it was like right at the last moment that I possibly could have submitted. And I submitted once and I got in, but that's certainly not always the case. But I think it's great that it always provides that opportunity. You don't have to wait another year, another several years to try again and, quite likely get in.
And this, of course, is an amazing organization, but there's so many things you guys can submit to, like just submitting to really any contest. If you're paying heavy fees, maybe not, but
this is free to enter on this one, by the way.
But there's other books like Spectrum, which is an amazing art annual. There's 3x3. There's Communication Arts. There's the Society of Illustrators. There's Infected by Art. There's so many good things you can submit your art to and get it out into the right hands.
That's great. So now on the fact of illustration and turning it into a career. Like, how does one juggle that from, it's almost like when do you quit your day job? You know, what's that transition and how should you do? Because there's everything right about being eager and positive about it, but there's everything also right about being real.
It's, do you want to handle any of that?
Sure. I mean, my last full-time day job before I started, jumping into art, I actually got fired because my heart wasn't really into it anymore. This is like
Well, that makes the choice easier, I
right.
guess.
Yeah, it was like the tail end of 8 years of teaching. And that point I was already back in Seattle. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, I guess, now I've got unemployment income and, that provided a little bit of runway to try and see what I could do. And like I said, that first year was pretty rough because I didn't really know what I should have been doing with it. But, I had that time to kind of figure it out and get my head together on that. And by the end of the year, I'd figured it out and I was, starting to connect with the right people. And I just started to join Lauren and Mark's program and started to really properly network at that point. So I think having some kind of runway of, money that you've set aside or people in your life who can support you for a little while, a part-time job. I worked at Home Depot part-time for quite a while, actually. I was as I was ramping up my freelance career. And the nice thing about that particular job was, having a whole bunch of other cashiers around, you could always schedule things. So I could go to, IMC workshop, or I could go do a convention like Emerald City, and I could go do all of these networking things because of the flexibility of the job. And then the more work I was getting from the art side, I could just dial down my hours and they were fine with that.
No, that's a good way to do it.
So
yeah,
that was really incredibly flexible.
It's another catch-22. Like if you're working this 9-to-5 job that's got you super busy and then you finally get your dream commission, you don't have the time to even do that. Like, and then let's say you got another one right after. Are you going to quit your job on the first commission? And so you need to make sure you allot yourself this time. I was fortunate in that I gave myself that stipulation that I wouldn't get a day job. So I told myself, how much do I need to live? I need 3. At this point, I graduated college. I moved back home. I lived in my parents' basement and my student loans were deferred for 6 months. So I needed $300 to buy food, pay for my car insurance and something. So I need to sell $300 worth of art every month. And then once I started making maybe 600, it was like, well, now I can rent half of an apartment with somebody. And then I lived only within the means I allowed myself from art. Because if you get a day job and you get comfortable with that income and you're making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, to go back to like being a fledgling artist and making $5,000 a year, which is about what I made my first year I filed taxes, is really hard. You're not going to do it. Like you don't want to give up your lifestyle. And so many people have this difficult time making this transition. But if you can do, say, a part-time job that just covers your bare cost of living, and then say, I'm going to dedicate all these other hours to pursuing this thing, and anything beyond that, I'm going to make this money from art alone. I think it's like a nice, easy way to make a transition. But you have to have a plan. You have to have savings. You have to have the time and really approach it like a strategy.
So that's very good. Now, you mentioned people showing their portfolios. Mm-hmm. So you've got different types of work. So on a portfolio, should you have like, I've got a little bit of everything, or do you want to have like a portfolio where you target it for your specific audience? Because I've had to go both ways when I've talked to artists.
It depends on what you mean by a little bit of everything. Like I'll see portfolios that have life drawing and sketches and concept art and landscapes and sculpture, and you don't want that. But let's say you're an oil painter who specializes in portraits. You want a little bit of everything, and like I want white people and black people and maybe not just portraits, like, but still niche. One of the advice I give my students a lot is people do not hire you because you can do everything. They hire you because you can do something no one else can do. And truly, like if you can make a portfolio that only you can do, that somebody else couldn't copy if they tried, whether it be style or technical prowess or imagination, somebody wants that. and somebody has to come to you to get it. There's literally no other place they can go. I've based most of my career on that premise. So
Good. And Bruce?
Very much the same thing. I mean, as I was saying in the panel earlier today, I kind of learned the hard way by taking all of those Craigslist jobs and doing a lot of art that I did not want to do, a lot of jobs that really were pretty terrible. I'm like, okay, I figured out I don't really like doing a lot of character stuff and, you know, like all of these other things that I was doing. And it's like, okay, landscapes and okay, weird landscapes. And so I kind of figured out, okay, this is where my happy place is. And then once I figured out where that was and was able to focus my portfolio around that so that those were the types of jobs that were coming to me, then it all got much better and it just kind of like snowballed downhill.
Yeah. And to expound on that, that focus isn't just with the style of your work. I think it's the focus of the work you want to do. That early on, like the notion, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but until I was like 13, that was just like, oh, well, one day, like it's Van Gogh is an artist and one day you'll die and be famous. Like that was my notion of artistry, right? Which is, it's too aloof. Being an artist, being a professional artist, if that's your goal, is so wide that you can't have a strategy. But if you say, I want to do magic cards, well, now you know, okay, my portfolio should be horizontal. My portfolio should include things like armor and dragons and landscapes. There's only 3 people that hire for Magic the Gathering. Let me look at what they hire and what their tastes are. I only have to impress 3 people, not the whole world, to get my dream job. That is so much more achievable of a goal and so focused that it seems like even if it takes you 10 years, you know these 5 steps you have to do this thing. If you don't narrow down that focus and you can do anything, your chances are pretty good you're going to just take detours for the rest of your life trying to figure it out. You know.
That's good. Now, one thing, if anybody has any questions, because one of the things that I like to do on the panels is if people have specific questions of either Bruce or Dan or myself, you're welcome to ask them. Just raise your hand and I will we'll address them as we continue on with other topics on this particular panel.
Interject anytime you guys like.
So at this point, does anybody have any particular questions of, yes?
Do you find like being in a gallery is somewhat helpful?
Well, it depends on the kind of work she wants to do. There was a gallery called Greenwich Workshop Gallery, and they were located in Connecticut, which is where I lived. And they did a lot of like Thomas Kincaid style prints in the 90s and stuff like that. But they also had an actual gallery space in downtown Fairfield, Connecticut. And I was just walking around and literally soliciting. Like I would hustle as a teenager. I walked through their gallery and they had all these landscapes, but they had nobody that did portrait work. And I was like, I paint mostly figurative work. And would you be interested? And they said, well, show us a sample of what you could do. And if we like it, we'll hang it. And so I went home and I spent like 3 weeks doing the best figurative painting I could do. And I brought it in and they hung it on the wall on a temporary basis to see if it would sell. And it sold like the next day. And so they took me as an artist. And whenever I didn't have a job to do, I would just do a painting for that gallery. But it's quite honestly almost as simple as that. Like if you drive past a gallery on your way to work every day and you think you can do better than somebody in that space, they'll hire you. Like if you see a book cover on the shelf that you think you can do better than, contact that art director. Like it's really not that bad. So gallery work, depending on the kind of work she wants to do. What I was painting at that time was essentially high-end interior decoration. It was something that looked good over somebody's couch. I wasn't painting dragons or anything. I was painting ballerinas. And so it's not stuff I wanted to do, but really it's about the audience your daughter's seeking out. Depending on her work, I would say do the work she wants to do, find out who wants to buy that. And are those people online or are those people walking around a town in a tourist city spending money? And that would be the deciding factor for me.
Or are they at a con?
Yeah. Are they at a con? This is a huge audience. There's so many people here whose full-time job as an artist is just selling prints to fandom, you know?
Yes, sir.
How do you start valuing the first commissions, getting into galleries, things like that? Is it like hourly? Is it kind of like the art itself, size-wise, things like that?
A little bit of all the above.
Do you want to go ahead and just give the question back so that, because we're recording?
Yeah, so if you guys couldn't hear, how do you start valuing your work? This is really the hardest thing when you're starting out, I think, or it's most hard when you're starting out. afterwards, it's really important for your art to always increase in value. It's an investment for most people. If they're buying an original painting and original paintings of yours start going down in price because you had fire sales or you just want to do cheaper work, everybody that bought your work previously has lost their investment, and it's not as desirable. So usually I tell people like how to price your work is 10% higher than your last painting all the time, just a little bit higher, maybe 5%, doesn't matter, just as long as it's a little higher than your last one. The very first one, that's tough. It's what you can sell it for. You might undersell yourself a little, but I think if you're paying yourself at least a fair hourly rate, just personally, like I spent 80 hours on this, I should get at least $10 an hour. I don't want to starve. I'm going to sell this for $800 is a pretty decent place to start or something, or whatever it is for you, considering how much time you spent on that piece. And then just make that your standard and only go up gradually. Doesn't matter if it's monthly or annually or whatever, just make sure you're gradually working upwards. Okay.
And then secondly, was that gallery down by Mill Plain Road?
Down what road?
Mill Plain Road?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Do you know Fairfield, Connecticut? Yep. Oh, neat. Yeah. Yeah. They also had a place in Shelton, Connecticut where they did the actual prints. And a lot of my friends would get jobs working in their warehouse there. And yeah. Yeah. What about you? Same process for your prices and stuff? Or?
Yeah, I think I started out at like 20 an hour, 25 an hour, maybe something like that. And then just kind of like bit by bit moved it up.
And to reiterate, it's the 20 an hour is not what you're charging your client. You're just working it out in your head at
Yeah,
that
I'm
rate.
just kind of estimating it. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never been very good at like, you know, setting a clock and okay, this is exactly how